Hello, hello, VOD watchers. Thanks for watching the long form of this when there should be like an edited version of this available. And I'm gonna sit tight and kind of like practice this presentation for a minute before I get into it. I'm gonna let a few of you trickle in. I'm gonna get into it in just a second. I've got the wide view so you can see kind of what this looks like when I'm presenting. I've got some notes here at the bottom, and I'm basically just going to be selecting the slides as I go. Starting with the vision, who's it for? App creators. If anyone swings through, feel free to say what's up in chat. I'm just going to be practicing this little slideshow for another minute or so, and then I'll get going. What we're doing is we're recording a YouTube video today. So it's kind of like a performance that I'm also streaming on Twitch. A YouTube video today. I don't know why I'm typing in chat. That's ridiculous. The distractions of live streaming are real, but I'm also recording this and I'm going to edit it into a bit of a YouTube video. It's kind of considered my keynote. So the vision, app creation should be accessible to everybody. We're serving app creators first. Here's the workflow. Developers are a bottleneck in your organization. Tell us something we don't know. I'm just looking over this content for another minute or two, and we can do it. I've been tweaking this up, trying to kind of get this this presentation to flow. And then I'm going to annoy a bunch of people by flaming their open source as poison. That's not nice. I should be nicer than that. Not super free. Okay, that ought to do it. No one should be upset anymore about me calling their open source non-free. I'm sure they won't be offended. My notes here at the bottom are really haphazard. Okay, I don't think I need to practice this too much more. I think 2 more minutes and I'm just gonna kind of wing it. It's gonna be kind of an authentic recording of this, and then I might be doing some editing of this content before I stick it up onto YouTube. But no pressure either way. Might also want to do some coding or some demos or just talking with people after this little presentation that's coming up. But I'm going to attempt to explain why my company is unironically different from everything else out there in the world. Is my vision brilliant or unhinged? Okay, so give me a holler in chat if you want to ask any questions throughout the presentation, or just say hi. And if I don't get to your questions until I'm done recording, then please don't worry. I will answer all questions that show up in chat because there's basically nobody here. Should be easy to do. Okay. I'm always nervous to record, always nervous to go live, but I can still be myself. I'm brand name Code Eric now. This is my new brand. And okay, time to see if I can switch this over. All right, serious Eric now. Ready? How many takes will it take me? No, I mean, once I get going, it should be pretty straightforward. But now is the time for me to get super hype recording a YouTube video. It's about to be permanent. Love that. Who doesn't love permanence on the internet? It's not scary at all. What could possibly go wrong? And I don't even need to hit record. Usually I'm like having to press start recording, but I'm already recording. Already streaming, and if anybody wants to say what's up, just say what's up. But here we go. Hello world. My name is Eric Vicente, and these are the Zerve keynotes. So if there's any video that I want you to watch, these are the videos. And in this video, I'm going to explain what Zerve is and how it can help you build apps today, but also why Zerve is unironically like everything else in the software space right now. And I know I'm a little crazy to say that, but maybe you'll believe me by the end of the video. So the vision is for app creation to be accessible to everyone. Now, that's a big vision, it's a big project, so I need to think about first who is Zerve for in the short term. And my goal right now is to help teams who are already building apps. So Zerve is a tool for app creators. And to understand how we can help app creators, let's take a look into the existing workflow of an app. Okay. So the app development workflow probably looks something like this. You've got some sort of engineer with their laptop. Usually we're a lot friendlier and we're not such a little gremlin. We're quite friendly people, but it's a slow process. It can be pretty painful as an engineer to have to build an application, especially if it needs to work on a lot of different platforms. In order to get your application out there, it needs to be built and deployed using a variety of different tools, depending on if it's going to apps or the websites, or probably both. Now, but the developers in your organization are also kind of a bottleneck, because you've got business people who need to affect the app, and you've got designers who are also trying to make changes in the application all the time. And usually they need to ask the developer to make those changes so that your app can be built and deployed again. Now, developers are, of course, kind of a bottleneck because we're kind of expensive, and most importantly, when all these little content changes are coming in, our time is being wasted, and developers could be spent, the time the developers could be spending building new features for the application. So we need to rethink about how changes kind of flow into your application. Now, with a simple little modification to your application, developers can attach your app to a Zerve server so that it can get content updates from the server. Then your developer will go in and add the schema that your application needs, depending on what sort of data that your application will be consuming from the Zerve server. And in return for inputting the schema, Zerve will give your code base type safety. At that point, your developer can go and redeploy the application like normal, and then enjoy really easy configuration updates. So the developer can just go into the Zerve app and make little changes, and those will flow into the application. So the developer doesn't always have to go through the build and deployment process. But then again, once Zerve is connected to your application, you've fixed a lot of the bottleneck in your organization, because now executives can go and make changes in the application depending on what the developers are enabling, and your designers can go in and also reconfigure things. Maybe changing colors, maybe changing the configuration of different layouts, or maybe just changing the different text strings that appear in the application. So yeah, that's how Zerve fits into your existing workflow. And that's how Zerve helps app creators own the content and configuration of their application by providing a more streamlined process to update the content rather than going through the deployment workflow. And really, everyone in the organization should love a tool like this, because it helps the business people, it helps the designers, and it also helps the developers waste less time. Now, this is a content management system. So you might have heard of a content management system. So why is Zerve different from basically everything else out there? Really what makes Zerve unique as a CMS? And to understand that, you need to understand how Zerve works, but also how other applications work. And the way Zerve works is there's a service running in the back end that's managing the data. It's got the database inside of it, and it has an API that you can access from the web front end. So this, in the case of Zerve, it's a Next.js app that talks to the API. But then you also want to have native apps in the App Store. So that's why you've got mobile apps. And they can also talk to the exact same API. Now, all of these different services and components, they're not exactly standalone. They have components inside of them that can be broken out, shared separately, and even used across other aspects of the program. So inside of the web app, you're also using aspects of the database, so you want to reuse bits of code that you also have in your API. And same on your mobile app. You want to be able to share code with the web app. So this is how basically every app works, not just Zerve, if it has a website and also an app. Now, to understand why Zerve is unique, let's take a look at how companies typically approach open source. So a typical company will have another similar application with an API service, a web front end, and a mobile app. And as they're building the application, often components will emerge in each of these pieces. And then it's possible to take those components, clean them up, publish them on GitHub, write documentation, and then open source them. And this is how open source is done in the industry today for the most part. And it's a really great way of doing things. I totally do advocate for this workflow. But still, only distinct parts of the application are open source. Like, what if you want to actually see the source code of the full application itself, including how all the pieces are tied together? Well, that does exist out there. There are actually quite a few source available applications, and some of them are actually open source. Some of them are kind of like open source in the sense that the source is on GitHub, but the license is such that you might get sued if you actually use that. And on that note, there's a big variety of open source packages that I think are real open source, but they are a little bit like poisonous in the sense that if you use a little bit of that code in your application, then all of a sudden your whole application needs to be open sourced. So I think this is problematic because I want developers to be able to take my code and make private changes to it and be able to sell that as a separate application. So I want to ensure the freedom of the developers to do whatever they want with the code, and for them to be truly free to profit off of this code that I'm giving away, rather than worrying about the freedom of the code itself, which I don't think is nearly as much of a concern as making sure that the people can use the code in every way that they want to. So naturally, Zerve is properly open source. All of the different components are open source. And as a result, there's a bit of a cohesion. And as part of the implementation of Zerve, I've attempted to keep all of the sort of external dependencies as replaceable as possible. So the Zerve application is pretty self-contained, and it can be deployed on almost any server out there. There are a few services that we do depend on, like messaging and a few backend services, but in any case, you'll have confidence that you can deploy Zerve on a variety of different services for a long time into the future. And of course, Zerve is not just the one application, it has all of these reusable components inside of it. And in that sense, the Zerve application itself is kind of like an example app that shows you how all of these different applications, how all these different components can be tied together in a cohesive and useful application. So it's kind of like, we have, to go, can I cut that part out? I sure hope so. So to take this back to the original Zerve mission of making app creation more accessible, let's think about how your developers create that custom app in the first place. Because this can be a really tedious and painful process, and your developers have to make all sorts of decisions in order to figure out how to make this application. So, the Zerve application is open source, and what that means is that you can take it, you can copy it, and fork it, and then it becomes yours. All you have to do, according to the permissive license that we use with Zerve, is you have to rebrand it so that it has a different name from Zerve. But then right away, your application can do everything the Zerve can do, everything the Zerve application can do right out of the box. Now, of course, the first thing you're probably going to want to do is, delete some of the functionality that you don't need from the Zerve application. But then you can use the suite of existing packages to integrate them into your application as you need to add whatever features you need for your application in your company. So yeah, that is how, oops, that was a phone call. So that is how Zerve is an application framework in my mind. It's already open source, and you can already follow this workflow, although I don't recommend it right now. Zerve is going to be a really amazing application framework, but right now, it's mostly an application that I'm building that will eventually be useful in a much broader sense. Now, to understand... So yeah, Zerve is an application framework, but it's not the only application framework out there. There's other open source app frameworks. So really, again, why is Zerve distinct? What is special about this project? And it kind of comes into, let's take a look at this process right here, because what's happening here is you are taking the Zerve application and it is not sufficient for you. So you are forking it and making your own application. And at that point, by the way, the application is yours to maintain. It's your responsibility to make sure that it's up to date, make sure that it continues to work. And this can be really expensive. All of this stuff can be really expensive and can take a lot of time. So I really don't want this to be a burden for you. I feel like this fork is a sign that the Zerve app is failing you. And it should be able to do additional things for you that you somehow can't get out of it, and then you need to fork the application for yourself. So I want to take a step back and look at the Zerve application and think about what it actually should do. I mean, due to my own personal limitations, Zerve is starting off as a very simple content management system for you to configure your app. But ultimately, I think it should be able to do so much more. I hope to add functionality like files and note-taking capabilities, so that way consumers have an alternative knowledge application that they can use as a personal knowledge base. I want business people and operators to have an alternative to spreadsheets that they can use to manage their business. And if we really use our imaginations, we can equip Zerve with the right integrations and really powerful no-code features. And then Zerve can grow to support all kinds of different creatives and consumers. And this, finally, is why I think Zerve is totally unlike anything else in the world of software. I'm just going to say this again. Such a cool thing. It's ridiculous. And this is why I unironically believe that Zerve is really unlike anything else in the world of software. I might say that one more time, sorry. So finally, this is why I believe Zerve is actually, unironically, different from everything else in the world of software. Yes, it helps with your existing workflow by being a content management system that lets your non-technical people own the configuration and the content in your application. But it's not the only content management system out there. Yes, Zerve is an open source framework that helps your developers build their next application, and it can help them add features to your current application. But it's not the only way to build an app. But unlike every other content management system and app framework out there, Zerve is meant to grow to directly support businesses, educators, and creatives. And this is what I think is incredibly powerful. So you tell me, okay, I don't know. Is my vision brilliant or is it unhinged? I'd love to hear from you in the comments and in the social medias. And if you've made it to this point in the video, I'm sure you want to see where this goes, this audacious effort. If it implodes on the launch pad, or hey, if we're going to the moon. So be sure to subscribe, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. I don't like that sign off at all, but I've already said it. We're shipping it. I'm not gonna go back and re-record this. This has been a lot of fun. And hopefully this will be like a video within 10 minutes or so. And yeah, so time for me to like edit this video and also to move on to the next thing. I'm really excited to not be worrying about this because I've been thinking about this video kind of like non-stop for a minute. If anyone's in here and wants to say hi, let me know if you're interested in seeing any of my YouTube videos. I'm happy to take a look at those. And also I'm going to be moving on to some code if no one interrupts me soon. Okay, yeah, what an unhinged talk. Oh my gosh. So fun that I don't have to worry about this again until next time. But I've also been thinking about like creating a more polished deck for investors because although I haven't really started seeking investment for this yet, I am pretty serious about that path. So I will need a deck, and I think this is a good starting point to show kind of why Zerve is unique, but also this might be a little bit much for a first intro for VCs, but hey, maybe that's a way to sort of find the folks who are well aligned with what I'm trying to do permissively licensed open source software, but make money off of it in the short term as a content management service. Okay. And I didn't really prepare much for what I'm doing like next on the stream, but that's not too much of a concern actually. I have been thinking about the website, so I think I will jump into the code of the web engineering for an hour or two, and then afterwards I'm going to jump into the edit room, and I'm going to edit that video I just recorded. Okay, so we are on Yarn dev server, developing the server, and then this is the web dev. This is the mobile dev. Wow, these are the 3 applications I was just talking about. And on the mobile app, we're in some busted state where the login situation is not looking so hot. Please bear with me. I might start up some music so that way this poor stream is not quite so miserably boring. But then I need my own audio set up to work. Okay, time for a chill coding stream, which feels so weird to be jumping in here to the lo-fi chill coding stream after such a little intense thing. You can see when I was intending to present this, like 10 days ago, I'm just going to rename this to today's date, the date that I recorded, 5/9. Oops, this can go away. Chill coding stream. I'm getting my terminal all set up over here. I think I'm running like the wrong application. Yeah, I was running the wrong web application. Come on. Yeah, I have my client's project on the other screen that I'm trying to load and turn into Zerve. Okay. Hello. Hello there. Okay, so here we're running the web server, and here we're running the, oh, we're not running. Now we're running the API server. So let's see if we can find the code for the home page. Pages index, because it's a Next app. Oh, and look, I'm in a really weird spot right now. I cleaned up the React Native app, but the mobile app is a total mess because there's 2 of them. One of them is a Solito starter, which I was using to kind of get started with some of these cross-platform React Native components from Fernando Rojo. So I was experimenting with Solito, and now Zoo Mobile. So now I'm thinking, oh, actually, I quit the wrong server. So I'm going to quit the web service because this is starting Zed Web, and instead the new thing is called Zoo. So yarn workspace, Zoo web dev. Is this going to start? Okay, and it's a totally different application than our main application, and now we've got to copy everything over. And it's having troubles due to some terrible loader issue. And this didn't happen last time I started it, so that's always fun. Yeah, it's unhappy. So I think this can be fixed by using next transpile modules, because what's happening is the next app is trying to refer to code that's not being compiled properly. And inside of Zweb, there's a config file. Transpile these, and then I'm really like, it's pretty bad that React Native is even getting referenced on the web stuff, so here I have a comment that's to that effect. And I was really hoping to move away from this nightmare of a next config to the other next config that was working so well. So maybe I can figure out how to get Zoo Mobile to start properly. Because if we see here, my guess, or Zoo Web, we're probably referring to connection somehow. I want to just make sure that everything can run if we don't refer to the connection like that. And again, I'm looking in the wrong place. So we're looking for pages index inside of Zoo Web. Okay, so it's referring to home screen. Home screen's referring to all this stuff. I'm wondering where do I do a weird import? Inside of Zoo. Oh, so I'm looking at the wrong place, of course. Zoo Web. So I'm thinking maybe underscore app is referring to something that I've created. And this is probably the issue here. I wonder if we just comment out this, or just like if we refuse to import it, and then we comment out down here where we're using it, can the application start? Oh wait, yeah, I was getting myself confused because we started the wrong application, but we're trying to move everything to this quote-unquote new application called Zoo. Okay. Was that a server rendered thing that worked? And now it's like loading the rest of it? Okay. So now it's complaining about something that's actually probably quite real, which is that there's no provider, because I think it was relying on some of our logic that we had in there. So this provider, so yeah, there's issues here when we're querying for Zerve query. But I think this file itself is able to be loaded no problem. Because yes, the query provider refers to this connection, right? Doesn't it? Or is it just the React query client? So I wish Next would tell me like who is depending on this file. But in any case, I should be able to fix it by just kind of adding Next transpile modules to the Next config. And we'll see how painful that is in just a second, because these Next configs are so different from each other. Huh, okay. I thought that it was going to be hard to find the transpile modules or hard to set up transpile modules, but they're already here. And here, look, I'm already transpiling one of my packages. So what if I also transpile Zerve query? Let me just manually try adding to this list. I do want this to be cleaner, so that way when I add a new package, I don't need to add this there. Found a change in nextconfig.js. Please restart your server. You got it, bud. Let's see what the error says now. Probably, yeah, now it's complaining about a different zoo package. Now it's complaining about core. That means maybe we're making progress. And we can actually see some fun stuff today rather than terrible configuration pain. You can transpile as many modules as you'd like to. Just as many as it takes. Okay, what is going on here? I've never seen an error that looks like this. It's some Webpack cache error. Isn't that interesting? It's complaining about React Native Reanimated, some sort of Babel preset. Wait, let's see if... Wait. Look, this is what the front end is supposed to look like. Okay, so those were just terrible and confusing warnings. Great. Now we can start to worry about integrating our application into here, especially now that it looks like the provider is working. But before we do that, I do want to copy over some of the hacks that I had before in the other next config. So Zweb has this thing where it gets local package names by like iterating all over all of the package.jsons, because this is just literally how these don't correspond with the folder name. They correspond with the name of the package in the package.json. So this is like really gross. But you know we're doing it. Okay, I'm just going to copy, including all of this junk up here. Okay, looks like we don't need some of this. Now local package names. That should include all of the Zerve things. So all of these three can be commented out, I bet. Or deleted, hopefully. Found a change in your next config. Yeah, this probably makes sense. I think I was pretty lazy with my copy paste. Yeah, let's just... Oh, isn't that lovely how you put the require? Ugh. How the require statement is like right attached to the invocation of it. Whatever, not a big deal. We're just going to... what was it? Next compose plugins. With plugins is the duplicate thing. I was thinking with transpile modules is where the trouble is, but it's not. Okay, one more time. Is it starting up no problem or yes problem? Great, this is it working. When it spews out like a big wall of warnings, that's how you know it's quote unquote working. And I can delete these. And we don't have to worry quite so much about making sure that our next app is able to transpile everything in our repo. So because our query provider is here, we should be able to query for some stuff on our home screen. Now let's take a look at this ugly stuff that we have in the other app that we want to copy over. It's really terrible looking in the other app, but it's doing something good. So it's in Zweb/pages/index. Oh, sorry, in Zweb. I would not blame you if you're terribly confused if you're trying to follow along. But fortunately, there's just one viewer out there subjected to this madness. So feel free to say hello in chat. Zed path page is in the components folder. Okay, so there are a bunch of like web-specific components, it looks like, including path page, Zed path page. Yeah, this hello thing is coming from there. So I kind of just want this whole component to be copied over. The other thing is we're going to cheat Next.js. We're not going to be doing Next.js in the way that Next.js wants us to do Next.js, because all of our paths are going to be kind of defined based on the Zed API. We kind of have this like crazy modularity going on that I don't want to spoil. I want to keep it going on web. So like right now, this page is defined. I want every page on web to be basically defined on the same component. And that's what this Zed path page is. It's just in the wrong area of the app, isn't it? It's in Zed web. Yeah, so we need to copy. Come on. I'm struggling. Usually it shows me the location of the file. Okay, here's the file. So because the other website is working, we might as well just go all in on it and move components and pages, or just delete this whole previous app. It has a bunch of dependencies. So like all of these things: Zerve node, core, query, React, and Zerve UI. We want this to be in the zoo. The zoo package itself is the one that works on mobile and on backend. So we don't want all these dependencies here, but we do probably want core and query, because I think core and query both don't care about if front end or back end or React Native or not. And there's also Zerve/UI, which I think should be a cross-platform component. So hopefully this won't cause bad things if we're using all of these things from our zoo app. So let's just give it a try. For example, components. Okay, we've got a bunch of components copied over. We have a folder called app, which is our own folder. And this features stuff is what was here ahead of time, what the boilerplate has. So let's take a look at who's implementing from that. Zoo web. So basically, each screen is being imported as a separate quote-unquote feature. Okay, let's just create a new stub, which is going to be like the component for all of our screens. And as a starting point, I'm going to try to use Zed path page. I'm just going to copy the entire thing over into the components. So yeah, in our mono repo, we've got all of our packages. And one of those packages is Zoo, which is a cross-platform component which contains most of the app logic. Okay. Page layout is a component that we're trying to import, which probably doesn't exist in this application. Okay, so let's go ahead and grab that whole file. Page layout. Page layout. Page layout. Okay. I'm going to copy all of you. And it's kind of confusing where this file is, because this is very specific to web, at least right now. Maybe I'll just go ahead and call that web page layout. And again, we're not in Zoo web. I'm just going to move this file this time. move it all the way down to packages. This code base is already so big. Okay, so now this path page is able to refer to the page layout. And wow, this is really bad. This is not very good code that I have going on here. What it's doing is it's hard coding the URL, or it's hard coding the connection that's available within the client, and it's hard coding it to localhost. So it should be probably looking at its own window, but the problem is sometimes this needs to run on the back end, and it needs the actual URL here. So the way to fix that ultimately is to have probably like an environment variable that tells the application what its URL is, because oftentimes a web application does not know its own URL, and that would be problematic here. But specifically, it needs to know the URL of the API, not necessarily its own URL. Although if it does need to send like a login email, you want that URL to go to the web app. So yep, you need the API and the application to both know their own URLs, their own sort of host name. Okay, so Z path page, and it takes a path, and if it takes a path with an empty string, it should render the root. So here inside of our screens, oops, okay, I'm just going to, wherever we're referring to home/screen, home/screen, it's mostly referred to by right here, the index.ts of our pages. Okay, let's go ahead and implement a home screen here. So we're returning the Z path page, but it looks like TypeScript isn't happy about importing that right now. And it needs a path of an empty array. So why can't we import Z path page? It's inside of Zerve/zoo/components/Z path page. Oh, well, it needs to be called the correct thing. And it's the default function. Exporting default causes just so much confusion sometimes. Okay, what happens now on our home screen? Oops, this isn't our home screen. Okay, wow, it's trying to load a font. That's bad news? Good news? I can't tell. It's trying to load React Native vector icons. Yeah, but I don't know how this is happening. Maybe I'll search for Expo vector app icons, and then that error. Unexpected character module parse failed. So I'm Googling issue with compiling SSR. Yeah, that sounds kind of like what's happening here. I don't know. And it's Fernando Rojo's filing this issue. It's very on brand. Here's Evan, good friend. If you want to use all these things, Evan's 2 years ago. Evan's like 3 years ago. Okay, using Next with Expo for Web. Oh my, I was hoping that this sort of thing would be working because I was already using, or because I'm starting from Fernando Rojo's starter here on Expo, or on Next. Nexpo, as they say. Okay, this is the wrong file. Here we go. I don't even know what I'm looking for right now. I'm looking at the next Next.js config, and I was going to see if there is a with Expo here. With Expo. Right. Project root. Don't you sometimes need to provide workspace root to with Expo? It's also so confusing that that's what's happening here, is that these are the arguments that are being passed into with Expo. We're like so deep in a very confusing thing. And it's because we're using with plugins to give us that behavior naturally. So yeah, let's just open the other next config where I don't think we were having this issue. And that's in the Zerve. Oh, and here, look, we're doing all sorts of stuff without calling with Expo. So maybe it's got a workspace root, maybe not. But yeah, there's the difference between project root and workspace root, naturally. Naturally. And I should have figured that without like having prepped my dev environment, there would be all sorts of terrible things happening here with Expo. So I'd like to know what's happening instead of with Expo. And I'd like to compare that with the result of what's happening out here. Yeah, clearly I was messing around with this or something, because we're like doing some URL loading for TTF files. And this is apparently the way that I got it to work, because there were some these other includes that I decided to not use, as terribly commented out. So, would I be absolutely crazy to take like this as the config and then modify the config afterwards? Because that's the only thing I know how to do in a somewhat safe way. Something like that, except, you know, you're going to do ... config and then change something in here. So what would we change? Wait, it's actually not like that. It's the second argument to with plugins. So undo all that thing I just said. And it's so the second argument with plugins is next config. So, okay, so this is the next config. Now I'm just going to try copying this. So React strict mode is true, TypeScript is blah, blah, blah. And the Webpack is like this. Webpack 5 is true. Do I have Webpack 5 true? If not, who knows if this config will be compatible. This is probably not going to work at all. And here, these are things that are probably already being done with Expo. And honestly, I was expecting with Expo to kind of make this font thing work. But, you know, you can't have too many expectations. So now, let's just try it. We're trying this thing specifically. Found a change in next config. Please restart. No shot I fixed it, right? That'd be nice, but it's pretty slow. There's an error of some sort here that it's trying to show. React is not defined. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I've seen this sort of thing 1,000 times ever since it supposedly became optional for you to import React, right? I think actually, so first of all, this should fix it, right? But I don't want to have to do this. I don't know why I'm aggressively restarting the next app, but just in case, I'm going to aggressively restart the next app and see if importing React explicitly helps. Yay! This is really exciting because it's actually pulling this data out of the API. And what it mostly means is that the Zerve code is working entirely in the in the web environment as far as the Zerve querying code. Good, but also not good enough. So specifically what we just did was not ideal, and I think it can be fixed somewhere inside of the next config that where we just were. Or it's the TS config, right? TS config has a React mode specified, right? Oh, JSX preserve. Yeah, I think this might be it. JSX, I think React. Let me see what else I do in this code base. So inside of the repo where I don't have this problem, wait, no, that's just what I wrote down. I'm getting myself super twisted up. There's a few different modes. It looks like there's React-JSX. I'll try that one right now. We'll see. It's just a little bit of trial and error. There's only a few options on this, so I'm sure we'll get it before too long. Will this error go away? No. Okay, so that was with JSX preserve. Wait, did we not change the right thing? Oh man, I don't know what's going on. And this is inside of Zoo Web, which is definitely what we're running. So I thought I just changed this to React.JSX, but apparently I didn't. The following mandatory changes were made. Okay. That's so nice of you, Next, is to be making these changes without me being aware. And you're setting JSX to preserve. Next.js implements its own optimized JSX transform. Great. Oh, okay. Here's what I do. Because it's actually not struggling to compile, to use React in the app. No, it is struggling to use. If I refresh, is this a thing? It's interesting that it's complaining. It is complaining inside of the app. I thought it was complaining inside of the Zoo package. I'm just closing some windows so that my brain gets cleared up again. Okay. How did this work before? Anyways, there's only a few places we're doing this, because literally there's just this file, and then there's another file which is going to be very much like this file, and it's going to be the ... path terms. So basically we're going to capture all of the rest of the paths this way. It's going to be the path screen. And here it's called a slightly different thing, but here we have this key. This is important. Use router is going to come from next. Excuse me, next. Will someone please auto import use router from next? Right. No. It's from next/router. Okay. String or undefined is not assignable to string. Okay, so that seems like a pretty easy thing to fix, type safety wise. Okay. That's counterintuitive, but we know this is kind of the right thing anyways. Okay, so now when we go to a different page, for example, if we go to /auth, which we know is going to be an available child here, is it working? No, this doesn't look like it's working. It looks like the path is being pretty thoroughly ignored here by zpath page. And here, I'll just do a console.log. My path is path. Okay, weird. It gets a bunch of kind of, wow. It's funny that I was just like scolding TypeScript for not catching, saying like, oh yeah, no, they'll never be an undefined in the array. And then here's like, here it is, a bunch of arrays with undefined. Let's see if it works here where they should be empty arrays. My path is empty array. My path is empty array. Okay. So something is going wrong specifically on this logic here. Oh, here, look, it's querying for zpath, which is never going to be here because that's what it was called on the previous page. People watching this are like going to be, duh. But I didn't realize that until just now, so you can see what the confusion was coming from. Okay, so now we're going to go here to /auth. And yes, this is the auth node, and this is the correct path, except for the first time when it's undefined. And that's why probably there's not is loading, but in the router, there's router dot like is ready or something. Is ready. Like ideally, if we're not even ready, you don't like return, you don't render anything. I don't know if that's what you want in your average Next app, but it does mean at least our component only ever sees the path when it's actually ready. I wonder what's going wrong with the site manifest. That's interesting. Cool. So actually, from a feature perspective, we've gotten as far as the features that we actually care about. We have the same functionality now in our new Next app that we did in our busted old previous one. Like, I'll bet you this new one is using all the latest versions of Next. Next 12.1, is that the latest? This tool is called Version Lens. It's very helpful. Gotcha. Yeah, we're very close to updated to Next. We just needed to do a little patch version bump. Okay, and we're also referring to something called RAF. What is RAF? Okay, I don't know if I've managed to delete the need for it, but I don't see why we would need it. Okay, I'm going to fix this title from hello to showing the path. Path.join with a slash. And you can also say, oops, you can say like if not path.length. Well, let's just say if you have path.length, then you want to join the path. Otherwise, you want to say like home or something. I'll just say Z for now. So on the home page, it says Z. And then when you go to /auth, it has all the auth stuff. Okay. So I'm going to commit the code and delete the other app because this is such an excellent stopping point. I will do a little bit more before I end stream, but it's really refreshing now to have a like a web app that's at least is not totally broken, or like it feels like I'm making progress on web for the first time in a while. I'm also going to delete these features because I don't think we refer to them anymore. Detail screen? Who's using this? Right, yeah, some old stuff in pages. Because we don't care about this user thing anymore. Okay, and what about the other thing, this home/screen? No one's referring to that. So this whole folder of features can be deleted. They weren't real features anyways. We're going to have to build those up from scratch. Although a lot of the features actually works on the mobile app, so it's going to be even more complicated than building them from scratch because we're going to need to figure out how to share a lot of functionality. Okay, so let's delete the old app and then also make sure the README is up to date, pointing to the good stuff. So ZWeb. Now there are things in here that maybe I want to preserve that I've like prototyped in the past, like shell might have some stuff. No, this is too bare to preserve. There's one or two files here that I did work a lot on that are very bad. One is a command palette, and one is a navigator. And I think there might be a page that actually uses them. Oh, it is the shell index. And all it does, it renders a page with palette. Okay. So this is like middle ground between code I want to delete and code that we actually want to continue to fix. But because we're going to be deleting this whole folder, this ZWeb folder, I'm going to grab palette and navigator and probably page. What is page? Page has the path with palette. So I'm going to rename this file page with palette. And I'll grab these three files and save them. We're going to save you, buddies, just in case we want to use you in the future. Okay, hang on. This is the folder, components folder inside of Zoo. Okay, and it's all in Git, so I'm actually not super worried about just like aggressively deleting. Yeah, so this was actually the querying code for the for the demo that I was working on that I made way back when. You can see about a month ago is when I made that demo. Sheesh. No problem though, ZWeb is just going to get deleted. You've now been replaced with a Solito app. So we should actually be able to use Solito links now. And that, I think that's going to be like our goal for today, is getting to a stopping point where we're able to have links that are working on mobile and also on web. That's like a fingers crossed item. Okay, I'm going to save the navigator, save the palette. We can take a look at our source repo and we can see a bunch of stuff has been deleted, a bunch of stuff has been moved. Move good web parts to Zoo. Delete ZWeb. Nice and descriptive commit message, far more descriptive than I usually make. Usually, like, it's just whatever was in my repository from yesterday, and I just commit and I say, this is what I had yesterday. And we're just going to be moving past this. Eventually, I'm sure the code base will be a little bit more mature, but we're not there yet. Okay, so I think we're done with whatever errors we had here. Thanks, Evan, for general support here. Okay, so time to go into Znode page and actually see what we're doing now that we have it working. Path page, it looks like I've called it. Let's try to remember the name of our screens, of our components. Okay, so you can see why it's so ugly. It's just literally grabbing all this data that it's loading, that it's grabbed from UZNode, and it's stringifying it into a paragraph. So it's kind of meant to be this ugly, isn't it? Okay, here I'm going to search for UZNode because we want to kind of do the same thing that the native app is doing. Because it's presumably using, okay, Z-loaded node. Oh my gosh. So I guess this is the dream. It's like just drop in Z-loaded node here on Z path page, and it's just surely not going to work, but wouldn't it be cool if it did? So Z-loaded node, it should do the loading itself, by the way, internally. So this is exported from Z-node inside of the same file that or the same folder that we're in. So okay, we're going to delete this paragraph. And yeah, we can also delete this like loading because we're loading here in the child. And the child even has its own spinner, it looks like. Time to see what breaks because something's going to break. About to perform a full refresh. Well, let me help you out there. I'm happy to perform the refresh. Okay, well, this makes a lot of sense because React Native MMKV just like has no implementation on web. So now is when we're going to need to start dealing with platform forks. Platform forking. The other question is like, why is MMKV even required? Because it's doing use connection. Well, use connection is not the problem, right? Because use connection is literally just grabbing the connection context, which we've set up outside of this screen, outside of this component. So maybe inside of the Z node, or maybe just one of these files is referring, trying to import MMKV. Z node, by the way, is quite the file. Let's say it's only 750 lines, but yeah, Z node is basically like a generic front end for the Z API. Do you think it's importing from MMKV? Who's importing from MMKV? Oh, what about show toast? I'll bet you toast. No, wait, why would toast rely on storage? Oh, store history event. Oh, interesting, interesting, interesting. Append. Yeah, this is definitely logic that's mobile only right now, because although theoretically we could fork app history. Okay, so we've got this file called app history. Now, what if I'm going to do something that might not work, but that's kind of the name of the game. History.web.tsx. And maybe, and yeah, like the first thing I'm going to do is delete create native storage that it's importing from Zerve native because, you know, that ain't going to be there. And then I'm going to delete everything else in this file until it doesn't really do anything, which is going to be perfect for us. Okay, everything that has squiggly red lines that's not being exported is being deleted. Or if it's being grayed out, it's being deleted. And if it has squiggly red lines and it is being exported, we just kind of delete the behavior. This is just brilliant. Flush history. Okay, here I have an idea for what the implementation of flush history can be. Perfect. It's going to be an empty implementation. Wait, flush history isn't even an exported thing. Yeah, let's just delete it all so that all the exported functions are just going to be little stubby stubs on their tubby tub toes. Append history async. Okay, check out this implementation. Oh, nailed it. Returns a string. Okay. Okay. That looks like a string. Okay. Report history event. That ought to work. And this is, oh man, I don't want to do any of this. Really? Okay, this is just going to be, this is a secret between you and me. Nobody needs to know that the web implementation of history is so broken. Export function use history. And that is probably, oh. No, it just returns the list of events. And the new list of events is an empty string, or an empty array. Okay, looks like we've re-implemented history.web. And hopefully now, our website, like, did I do all that work and it still is not even going to bypass? Okay, ID is not supported on web. Wait, does that mean that actually the rest of it does work? And also, bad news is it looks like history.web.tsx is not being respected. But there's a trick. Ha ha ha! Oh, I've been here before. So we can take the React Native one and call it .native, and then the web one is just the broken empty one. How's that sound? Is this gonna work maybe? I don't like how this doesn't work. At some point we're importing core storage, it looks like, which is not the same path as importing from history. Who imports from core storage? I think this might have even been called core data at one point, and I was like, wait a second, core data is Apple. It's core dapple. It's a core apple. Create native core storage. This is from, okay, so the problem here is something inside of native is getting imported on web. Don't know who or where or what. Because probably look, native/index, the first thing it refers to is /storage. So this is the main problem here. Is somebody's importing native, and I kind of need to just like look at the imports for a minute to even get to the bottom of it. Oh, we're going to delete the files that no longer exist. Have I been changing these files, or I don't know what's going on here. I'm just going to close these without saving the changes, because if I haven't saved the changes, how important could they possibly be? I wasn't sure if this error was a new error or not. It looks not. I actually don't even want to do that, because providing a new object in for the schema store is worse than providing no schema store at all. And JSON schema form is this really kind of crazy component that has JSON editing and also JSON schema, and also the ability to refer to other JSON schemas, which is why this JSON schema store is even a thing. So it's problematic that Zerve native is being referenced here. Well, actually, this one we fixed because we've moved it to the history.native.tsx. Oh, wait a second. Sanity check time. Okay, yeah, good. I wanted to make sure that I had actually removed the import. But I have. So, who is referencing Zerve/native? Home screen, huh? No, that's not it. Connection storage, huh? Who's referring to connection storage, do you think? Is that referred to from Znode? Yeah, it is. Okay, so now connection storage is another one of these things that is important on React Native, but for mobile or for web, actually, I don't even care because you can just kind of access a different URL. Okay, so connection storage.native.tsx is the good stuff. And then here we're going to come and break the hell out of connection storage web implementation, and we're going to delete references to the storage. So deleting create native storage, deleting the actual storage doohickey, deleting everything that refers to it, and then for everything that's being exported, we just kind of clean it all up. Get connection. I'm just going to have throw new error in here. Throw new error. Lol. No con on client. I don't know. It's on web. Use saved connection. I'll just return null, because that way we're still conforming to the exact same types. Mutate connections, that looks implemented. Destroy connection, total implementation here. Create connection. Okay, it looks like some lines that I can just delete. All of this code that we kind of just don't care about here on web quite as much, because the web app can kind of hard code its own API. But I'm sure I'm going to come and revisit this at some point and regret all of this. Regret all of these changes. Is connected? True. You're totally connected. You can believe me. All right, refresh. Can't use import statement outside of a module. What do you mean? Can't use import statement outside of a module, but like, isn't everyone here a module? Are these imports the ones that are like broken somehow? Do you think it tells me like whose import statement is at fault? Well, it's hinting here that React Native is the one responsible for the import statement. That's wait a second. This is bad, but is also kind of reminding me of something. This is ringing a bell. So zoo web here. Look. Next transpile modules. Now, I shouldn't need to put React Native in this list because React Native should not be imported on web. Like, we're trying to go, like, we have it configured. Like, it should be using React Native web instead of referring to React Native. But watch. I'll bet I just fixed it. And it's just going to drive me crazy. But also, this was something that I didn't want to have to worry about. So any fix is a fix that I will take. So slow. I can't even get a faster Mac. This is the fastest laptop that Apple makes. Let's just go. Is this gonna work or not? It's probably not working. Let me refresh. I'll refresh. Okay. Well, at least it gave me an error. I mean, it's not a new error, but at least it's no longer spinning. I don't like this one bit. Like, I could have sworn that this is how I fixed that last time, is I added React Native to the list of transpile modules. Hey, I just want to make sure I've properly restarted the server. Pretty sure I did, but hey, let's just go again. It's interesting. Yeah, it says using the external Babel configuration. Okay, compiling the error, and then it just kind of struggles to compile the error until I refresh. And this is the only error that it's being experienced. Cannot use an import statement outside of a module. What is going on with this? I don't know. Let me just try putting React Native Web here. I don't know why that would make any difference, though. I just don't have ideas on how to solve this. Because a certain amount of integration with React Native is working. And here, clearly it's going to be coming up with the same error, right? Oops. Just load the error next. Next, just load the error. Oh my gosh. Is this so much to ask for? Cannot use an import statement outside of the module. And it's legitimately referring to node modules / React Native / index.js. But why? Please no. Please no. And I, of course, deleted the other next config that I had. So now I've got to go find that on GitHub, basically. Okay, so what's funny is I haven't actually, wait, no, I have pushed the code, so I need to go look at my list of commits. I said, look at the list of commits. Oh, clicking on here. Okay, so I'll look at the repository. Oops, I'll look at the repository in this spot, and I'll check out apps/zweb/nextconfig.js. So here's me complaining about the same problem here. But then also here, we do this config resolve alias blah, blah, blah. Oh, and there's also the config resolve extensions. And I remember commenting this stuff out thinking oh, Expo config is probably doing this for us, but let's comment it back in. I really thought that this would be handled by the Expo, by the with Expo, but hey, just because it worked one way yesterday doesn't mean it's going to work the same way today, or at all today. It might just not work anymore. And I love how I had to go to GitHub to do some research, and then it's oh, these lines are just commented out in my code base. And it looks like we're having some similar issues, right? Next, right? Just give me the bad news, why don't you? Cannot use an import statement outside of a module. Right, yeah, love that error. Hoping this doesn't resemble a dead end for the stream. But it might be time to get some food and come back with a fresh brain. I was hoping to get links working. But what could I possibly be doing wrong here? I wonder how well our platform extensions are working, right? What if I just do a log statement here on history and here on connection storage? But here, let me also just remove these imports, just in case those affected anything. Seems unlikely, yeah. Okay, so this is the module that's being used, And just to double check, we'll put a similar thing that says native here. Cannot use an import statement outside of a module. Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for a helpful error. What? Like, I'm referring to React Native, of course I am. From all over the place. Then React Native is getting imported, and it's also like getting imported in a CommonJS way. Next transpile modules usually helps with that, I believe. And here, just like as a sanity check, let me come out to ZPath page and comment out zloaded node, because this is the entry point to all of the hurt. And you can tell, actually, because paragraph works fine down here. Tests. Yeah, so paragraph, this is actual React Native that we're referencing here. So I don't know what's going on. And we're already inside of a package. We're not inside of the Next app itself. We're referencing the React Native paragraph. I mean, this, of course, refers to something called themed text. Themed text refers to default text, which does come out of React Native. Okay? Okay. So now we should be all on the same page that, like, we're importing, because we're importing from React Native, this should really be React Native Web that we're importing from in this circumstance. But all this is working. I don't need to stress about this. I do need to stress about something else that's happening here inside of zloaded node. So znode is probably referring to something that's causing troubles, and it's such a big file, I struggle to understand where it gets broken. We refer to Zerve UI, which probably is not causing the issue because Zerve UI is not a problem. We're referring to Zerve query. We're referring to, okay, a bunch of navigation junk, which, you know, is fine. It should be fine. Oh, look at this. So when I renamed history to history.native, man, I wonder if this has happened elsewhere. VS Code was happy enough, was friendly enough to go ahead and track that rename on my import, but I don't want to import .native. I want to import history, which will be a different thing on web and native. So when I click on app/history, it takes me to actual history.tsx, but on React Native, history.native.tsx should be respected. Okay, I'm going to hit refresh on the React Native app. It's been a while since I've looked at the React Native app, and of course, all hell has broken loose. Use saved connections. Basically, it's probably using the new implementation, wink wink, like use saved connections. It's probably not referring to the iPhone app for some, or the .native.tsx file, which is a little obnoxious because, you know, I thought that's what you could do. I mean, we could do a .ios.ts. Oh, let's go ahead and start the app. I'm pretty sure it's this Zerve app. That doesn't look broken at all. I don't know what I did to fix it just there. Probably nothing. Probably nothing. Still that issue on the manifest, but I'm pretty sure that's entirely unrelated to this other stuff that's going on. Okay, ZPath page, let's see what happens when we use zloaded node now. Did we fix anything? Cannot use an import statement outside of a module. That's a classic. Thanks for that. Okay, so what I'm going to do, because zloaded node is part of the same package that we're already in, this file is importing something probably that's causing this disaster. So I'm just going to copy all these imports and see basically what triggers it. So for example, it's importing Vue from React Native. You know, that probably isn't the issue, but what happens if it is? So I'm going to comment out zloaded node, and we'll see which of the imports just by kind of manually copying each of them over. Okay, that one looks okay. So I'm going to copy like a bunch of imports at a time. And like delete any duplicates, okay. Refresh, no error. Okay, next up, navigation. Importing from navigation doesn't cause the issue. We can try importing from connection storage. No shot we have the same issue that we had before where it was just the .native, right? Yeah, because we already searched for this. Yeah. Okay, app/connection storage. Do you break it? No, apparently not. Okay, what about importing from app/links? Is that going to be possibly the error? Okay, so ZPath page and ZNode are in the same place. I mean, it's possible that it's something wrong in the implementation of ZNode, and then we can try commenting out parts of the file to figure out where it is, where the problem is. Okay, well, if this is able to load no problem, that means that everything that's being imported, I mean, unless there's some tree shaking going on and these things aren't actually being properly imported, it's referring to all the same junk. And there's no error happening when the page refers to it directly. Okay, so I don't think I've made any changes really to ZNode. So I'm going to like start aggressively commenting stuff out in this file. So zloaded node. It's just everything's going to return null. So znode. Okay, export function zstatic node. Okay, I'm just going to comment out all of these other ones. We just want to see the app like load on the web where we're actually importing zloaded node. Right? In fact, we don't even need to render it. Just by importing it, I bet the error will show up. Maybe? Okay, no, it is an actual problem where we are rendering. It's a problem when we render zloaded node. That's a little bit more interesting, I suppose. Couldn't find a navigation object. Well, it's interesting that I saw a different error for a second there. Something regarding React navigation, which is fine, not totally unexpected to run into issues. But isn't that confusing that like it showed me that other error for just a second and then it goes back to this main issue with importing? I mean, that's kind of interesting though, right? Like, you'd think that you're having issues somewhere on the part where the modules are being imported. But instead, the import seems to work just fine. And it's only a problem if I actually render it, right? Isn't that kind of messed up? I think it's kind of messed up. So we're probably even able to walk correctly into here. Console.log, rendering zloaded node. Do we get there on the server? Well, this is the mobile app, so do we get there on the server? Maybe not. Okay, let me look at the right thing. Oh, I probably just need to save this file. I was looking at the wrong. Error, couldn't find... I should take a screenshot of that time next time I see it. Oh, man. Okay, but if I don't actually render it, it's fine? Yeah, so there's like some deferred loading or something because it can be imported fine. It just cannot be rendered. Right? And I can prove that it's being imported fine by doing a console.log eval znode. So now it'll tell me on the front end, come on. If I do it properly, does it tell me on the front end? So maybe it doesn't actually import it, and it just gets tree shook. So actually, it could be a problem on the import path. Oh, here's how I find out for sure. I know it's so confusing and silly. Like, I don't even know how I know this stuff. Zloaded node. You can refer, this is like valid JavaScript. It's a little wonky, but I'm like just referring to it here. So basically, as a result, this shouldn't get tree shaken anymore. Like even if it doesn't even matter if I assign anything, I think it should load that piece. Okay, thank you. Okay, so it's not about it being rendered, it's about it being imported. But I actually also need to render it just in order for it to get properly imported. Otherwise, it gets tree shook. So, which is good. Tree shaking is very helpful in a massive repo like this. Okay, so now all that trial and error stuff that I was doing where it's like, is this it that's causing the import issue? Is this it? I need to repeat all of that and do the same thing where I'm basically preventing it from getting tree shaken. So, zloaded node, that is effectively out of here. Excuse me. And then we go back to the drawing board here. I'll do is I'll grab all this junk. What if it's expo/vector icons? That might be the thing that's causing all of the pain. I don't know. I don't want to point fingers until I know. That would just be very rude. Okay, so I'll try with half of you first. Font awesome. JSON schema form. Icon, native, stack, navigation prop. Because it could also be the navigation code that's like depending on React Native. And then we would need to kind of work that code out somehow. Oh, here it's not happy because it's a type. Yeah, so, okay, whatever, no big deal. Put this here. Okay, now, do you have errors? Yes, you have errors? Okay. So now I'm going to comment out these two. Now, do you have errors? You do. Okay. I thought it was font awesome. Do you think it's font awesome? No. Yeah, font awesome is okay. Good. This is going to be easier to fix. Okay. Here, I've isolated the issue, right? It works. And now I can break it by importing JSON schema form. And JSON schema form is just a really big file that has all sorts of stuff inside of it. So, you know, I can't be too upset that everything is broken. And now I'm kind of doing the same behavior here, where I'm going to be trial and error from this file to see, because I don't think it's like a problem inside of this file. I think it's a problem within the imports. Like, for example, referring to keyboard avoiding view. Oh, this is pretty indicting. Let me just try use navigation from native, because maybe that's it, is that it's use navigation is from React Native. And then we're just going to remember ourselves that JSON schema form is the cause of all of our troubles. Okay, so use navigation is not the trouble, but something here inside of JSON schema form. It's one of these imports. Oh, dude, it's right here in front of my eyes. Here, I'm referring to the UI package that is not usable on web. That's why this UI-native package exists. It probably shouldn't exist as its own package, but okay, watch. Now I can properly replicate my issue, maybe. Okay, so I'm only referring to dropdown as the bad thing. Yes, yes. Now I know why this is causing me troubles. But yeah, this is kind of what happens when you try to take components that were designed for React Native and just dropping them into a website that wasn't really ready for it. So I need to make JSON schema form not rely on anything inside of Zerve UI/UI native. How long have I been streaming? Do I need a break? I'm going to say that some substantial progress has been made. And what a crazy change of pace, too, since the beginning of the stream when I was all hyped up recording the YouTube video. I think I'm going to wind it down here. You've seen a little bit about what it's like to work in this code base, about how painful it can be because we're sharing code across web and React Native. And the checkpoint I was hoping to get to today of doing links inside of the application, I didn't quite reach. And now I found this new refactoring project that I need to do. To be honest, I already knew about this, but I had kind of forgotten how deeply integrated everything was. And the way I'm probably going to go about fixing this is taking these UI native components, like the bottom sheet, the action sheet, which is just a bottom sheet that kind of has a simpler way of setting it up, and the dropdown, and I will refactor them out into context. So that way we're going to need a separate implementation on web for these things, which does make sense because React Native bottom sheet is great. It's great for React Native. It's not quite amazing for web. Of course, I'll need some sort of other modal. And yeah, this integration has a really long way to go. But it was very exciting to kind of consolidate our Next.js development efforts and make some progress in determining like what it takes to get this application running on web. So if you've tuned in so far, I want to thank you for being here. I'd love to hear what you think of this whole endeavor in the comments and on social media. You can hit me up on Twitter. Also, in the description of this video, I've linked a Discord channel, which is actually totally empty right now. But if you do want to jump into the Discord channel, I will see you there. I will say hello. And I hope we will have some good time working on this together. Or I can also help you use Zerve as a content management system for your application. Sort of. I still a few additional steps. I'm going to be deploying a dev service that people can play with, hopefully not too long from now. But that's just about it for today. So thank you all for being here and for being part of the Zerve community. I will see you in the next video.